Well, Talking Church, I'm excited because this is a fun episode. I've been talking about doing this for a while, and you've been on the podcast, Dad. Connor's been on the podcast a while ago. Mom, this is your first time?
You've never
Maiden
invited
voyage.
me.
Yeah. We needed to make sure we had some chaperones because in order for you to make sure you don't say things that get you in trouble.
Wow.
But the goal of this conversation is hopefully helpful for a lot of people that are listening that do ministry with family. I get the question a lot on the road when we're traveling at accelerators or at conference.
Yep.
People just say, doing ministry with family, what is that like? How have you stayed sane? How have you enjoyed working together? Have there been challenges? And there's obviously different levels of it. There's growing up as PKs and how you raised us, and we both are serving in the church. But then there's also being adults in ministry and working with your adult children and your adult parents. And there's a lot to talk about. And so we'll just see where the conversation goes. But I think that if we start from how you raised us, I think that would be a good starting point. And you guys matched in your plaid today.
We did.
For those who are watching.
He always likes to copy me.
Well, she gets dressed first, so I see what she's wearing, and then I, copy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe Connor, you introduce your role just for people, what you do here at the church for context, and then maybe just go back to when the church started from there. But Connor, kick us off, then Mom, and people I think know Dad what you do.
Yeah. So I'm the discipleship pastor. So that means everything, getting people plugged into groups, teams, men's ministry, women's ministry, all of our care and outreach.
We joke that we work together the absolute least of anyone in the organization because you do hyper local and mine is hyper outside of the four walls. So we don't work together very much, but
it's probably for the best.
But weren't you guys saying the other day too, you said, I spend tons of ministry time with you and not a lot of casual time.
Correct.
And I spend more casual time with you and very little ministry time.
We were in the car talking about this at lunch, and I said, every time I bring up anything like personal life, Dad just wants to talk about work. And he's like, are you kidding? Anytime I bring up work, all Dad wants to do is talk about personal. But you just had Beckham, and now he's celebrated his first birthday. And so,
yeah.
So apple of your eye. Yeah.
Yes. And so Connor's my boss, basically.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
It is. Is he a good boss?
Yeah.
I keep her accountable.
He does. So I'm over women's ministry and kind of whatever Dad needs me to do. I travel with him sometimes. And yeah, I just love being a part of everything about the church. So.
And we always mention our lead pastors, but we talked about this the other day, that you kind of see yourself as lead pastors together, but you wouldn't see yourself necessarily as a lead pastor separate.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've never been like kind of the co-pastor title for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but because I just feel like we are the lead pastors, but separately, I'm a pastor. But
Yeah, that is interesting because you use Pastor Becca and then you say we're the lead pastors, but then you don't say co-pastor and you never are like, hey, the pastor's here. It's interesting.
Yeah.
You move it back and forth in that. No,
Yeah.
I think that's the way we live it out. And some people are like too strong and
Yeah.
they say like both of us are equal and it's not like that. But yet you'd say we're lead pastors and I would say you helped start the church just as much as I did. I was out in front, but you were doing everything behind the scenes, making this church work.
yeah, and everybody's different. I mean, I don't feel, even though I guess we're the lead pastors, I don't feel like I'm the co-lead pastor.
Right.
But
right. Totally.
I think that's just more my personality too.
Absolutely. When we were born, you started church. I wasn't born yet when the church started. Connor was, what, two?
Two. Yeah.
And then I came along the next year, and you were very intentional in raising pastor kids. Was that because you saw other pastors' kids that were not walking with the Lord, or what? Like, was there a reason for all the intentionality? Because you've taught conference sessions, and we'll get into some of that in a moment, but about how intentional you were with Connor and me. But was it because of other things you saw, or was it just you always, you're intentional about a lot of things?
Yeah, but it was seeing kids that didn't do well in ministry, and I was like, I wonder why they didn't do well in ministry. So I tried to study and just pay attention. And then being a youth pastor, I had been a youth pastor for years, and I saw kids that were rejecting their parents' faith. And so I watched that, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of things that we're going to do to make sure that it's their faith and that they own it. And I was always asking advice. Like, even you referenced Beckham being born. one of my things for the year was have 3 conversations with grandpas about how to be a great grandpa to a grandchild. Like, I was like, I'm going to learn from people that have done it. So I was like, let's look at people whose kids turned out. Let's talk to people where their kids didn't turn out the way they thought and what happened, and then gather that. So it helped me to be intentional.
And I never came at it from that angle as much as, because I didn't grow up in ministry, but I think it was just wanting to be parents that had integrity and that were the same everywhere they went. Like, and I just felt like that consistency would be the best thing for my kids to see is, we're the same people. We're not putting on a facade, or we're not
Right.
trying to be somebody that we're not, but just wanted you to see an authentic person.
What were some of the things that you did when we were younger that to kind of protect us, but also make us love? I mean, I don't remember a ton of it. I know we didn't play a ton of traveling sports. We weren't super involved in that. I remember church wasn't really optional, but also I don't really remember many fights about going to church. Again, I don't know if you can think of things, but how did you manage even the weight of the responsibility that we have to go and you have to go? Was there any tension with that? And again, it's hard for me to think like,
No, you guys loved going to church.
Yeah.
We'd be like, okay, you don't have to go to church today because you were there yesterday. You're like, we want to go. And we're like, okay, well, you already heard the kids' lesson from last night. You're like, we want to hear it again. And next thing you know, you're serving, you're leading, and we're watching this, and you guys were always leaning into it. But
I think one thing we always tried to not to do was we never talked bad about the church.
Right.
In front of you guys. I think that's huge. So if we had something going on, whether it was, with the elders or with somebody in the church or whatever, we had a screen porch. And so we would always go out onto the screen porch and talk about whatever we needed to and then come back in. We didn't want you guys feeling like the church was
You didn't have to carry
bad.
that weight.
Yeah.
right, and then there's a staff member you're struggling with, and as a kid, then you're like, ooh, I don't like that person, and we
Right.
should hate that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, like, how parents would spell things out, like, we're going to go to MCDONALDS, and then after a while the kids are like, McDonald's, and you're pretending or you're trying to talk in code. And one time, Connor, you said, sometimes I pretend not to be listening, but I am. And I was like, oh my goodness. Even when we're talking in code, he's like paying attention. I was like, we've got to be deliberate to not talk bad about the church. So that was one thing we did. And then we made church fun. I mean, and I was like, you have to go to one and then you can serve at one, or you can just play games. You can go to my office. You can do whatever. And you loved it. And do you guys remember even like winning all the visitor contests? Like you'd invite all the visitors and you'd win every prize.
Well, it was really only once or twice.
Well, but it was legit. It wasn't.
No,
yeah, it was
illegitimate.
people from the
Like,
neighborhood.
we brought the most kids, and
Yeah,
we
but
won the
then
gift
after
card.
a while, we were like, you guys can't win
You
anymore.
can't win every time.
So there was
that's no fair.
the bad years where we were blacklisted from every
bad
Prize.
years,
event.
it continues on.
I mean, yeah. I don't think it's ever been lifted.
No,
No, but we tried to have fun. We tried to have fun at church and let you enjoy it. And I don't know. I think I'll go back to even when my dad was part of the church, my mom and dad, and we were having a family get together. And he said, hey, when we're here, Rob and Becca are just family. They're not Pastor Rob and Becca. Like, they're just family. Like, it's okay if they argue, if we, if he burps, you're not going to be like, I can't believe a pastor burped. It's like, we're family. I mean, but he said that. And he said, when we're at church, he's Pastor Rob. And when he's here, he's Rob. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure that you guys just get to be kids. And people would be like, I can't believe as a pastor's kid, you'd let him. And so we were like, wait, that's just a kid issue, not a pastor's kid issue.
Right.
Just a kid issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as we've grown as adults, and I want Connor and I to speak to this a little bit later, but it's become harder as we're adults in ministry together to put church on the back burner, right? Because as kids, it's like, all right, let them be kids.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do our thing. But
It's true.
now working together in ministry, there's always something to talk about. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but going back to some of those monumental moments as kids, there were different points where you put these mile markers almost in our life to where you let us have stake in it. But talk about some of those things, and then maybe we can share some memories.
Yeah, I want to
about
hear
that.
from you guys too, because we said we're going to do something once a quarter that wasn't that big. So we said
But
once.
just because ministry can get so busy And, we want you to have a positive experience with ministry and not like, oh, dad's always gone because he's busy. We'd be like, let's put something
On the calendar.
every quarter for us to just do as a family. So that
And it wasn't expensive.
No, but if it was a super busy season and you weren't seeing dad a lot, you would know, hey, in a couple months, we know we're going to, go swimming at a pool or go visit grandma, grandpa, or just whatever. But we'd have that time as a family. So it was something to look forward to.
Yeah, and I remember when we were getting ready to go to Disney World, which, by the way, I'm having all these flashback thoughts of we were saving up for Disney World. We did a 3-year savings plan to take you guys to Disney. I mean, literally, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and we're like, okay, it's going to take 3 years to save for this.
You should have started me an IRA. I'd be way richer.
You would be, and then you'd be taking us to
Buy
Disney.
Apple stock.
Yeah.
You know?
Jeez.
So
Buy Disney stock.
we do this, and as we're getting ready to go, you ask at dinner to Grandma, you said, if somebody dies when we're at Disney, do we have to leave? And you remember what she said to you?
Yeah, she said, "Now we'll put them in the freezer and wait till we get back."
Well, it's because we had a lot of funerals that
That was
interrupted
because
vacations.
2
you
years
imagine?
prior on each vacation, someone died and
I
we had to
know.
come back from
Yeah.
But it
vacation.
was so funny, for my mom to say, no, if somebody dies in church, we're going to put them in the freezer while you're at Disney and wait till you get home. And I'm like, only a preacher's kid is going to hear that. Only a
We're
preacher's
going to
kid.
ask that.
But we said once a quarter, we're going to have something fun for you to look forward to. And then we had milestones that we said we want to celebrate. And I don't know where I got these ideas from, which back up for a second. We prayed 31 virtues over you. And it's even in my devotion journal right now, 31 virtues that I pray over our family. I pray them over you, both of your wives. I pray over Beckham. I pray over us. And so we would pray those things over you, and we would speak prophetically, really, about you. People would say, preacher's kids are like Hophni and Phineas. Those kids were terrible. And I'd say, no, our kids will be like John the Baptist. He was a preacher's kid, and he fulfilled his destiny. And so we'd pray over you, and we'd speak over your life.
We'd get beheaded.
Not beheaded. Everything but the
Fulfill
beheading.
everything except for that part.
Yeah. And so we'd do that. And then we'd have milestones. And when they turned 10, what did we do?
Yeah, for 10 for their double-digit birthday, they got to pick where they wanted us to go as a family, and it couldn't be far.
Disney
It had to
World.
be driving distance.
Yeah, driving
did you pick?
distance. So,
Wisconsin Dells.
Yes.
yep, he picked Wisconsin Dells.
Yep.
It's like water park for those people who don't.
Yeah, that don't know. It's
Yeah.
It
Water
was
park capital of America.
more
Yeah.
expensive than Disney. It would have been cheaper
Really?
to go to Disney. Well, it probably would have been about the same.
No.
No. And then where did you pick for your double digit?
Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we stayed at this hotel, the Buffalo Gap Ranch.
Oh, my
Yep.
goodness.
It is infamous in our family
Infamous.
because we went there and it was probably 100 degrees.
With her mom and dad.
Yeah, with Grandma and Grandpa.
Was
Grandma
it?
and Grandpa
We were all in
Larson.
the same room.
And it was
and it
like
had-
100 degrees.
Yes.
And when you went in, the heater was turned on.
No,
Well,
no,
that was at Yellowstone.
Yellowstone.
What?
Buffalo Gap Ranch.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
the two-
luxury.
See,
Yeah,
I'm-
I'm thinking of this one though, where we walked in and
The
the
heater was on.
furnace
That was at
broke.
Yeah,
the heater
that was
Yellowstone.
at
broke.
Yellowstone. So we Buffalo Gap
Yeah.
Ranch was 2 queen-size beds and a bunk bed.
Oh, the
and we
Buffalo
had
Gap
Grandma-
was like the motel looking
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we went, and so back
So
to
it went
Yellow.
from bad to worse.
And we
Yeah.
go to
Yes.
Yellowstone, and we
Literally, it was
go in
horrible.
there, and it's like the record temperature, and we didn't realize not
They don't
one
have
hotel,
AC.
no AC.
No, and
not
all
one.
of
Yellowstone Park, they don't have
Outside they
AC.
do, but
I
not
hope
in the
they
park.
do now.
I don't think so.
I think it's like a green thing, it's legitimately like a
it's like a
philosophy
law.
of life. And so we get there, and they said, "There's no air conditioning." I'm like, "No air conditioning?" And we walked in. What happened? We walk in.
Yeah,
heater.
the heater was
Heater
on.
was
Like it was
stuck
literally
in the on
blasting
position.
heat.
It was like 120 degrees in there.
So it's like 100 outside and 120 inside.
And
the
you
maintenance guy-
traveled with a curtain.
Yeah.
Like
A
for
puppet
the
like a puppet
stage.
stage.
Yeah.
We brought part of
Yeah.
the church puppet stage with us, the stands and everything, and we'd get a single hotel room, like with 2 beds, and we put you on one side, and we'd angle the curtain so that the TV was on our side,
you could watch
so we could
TV.
watch TV, and you guys had to go to bed. And literally every hotel, I'd get out, I'd unload the puppet stage, bring it in, set it up. And
That's
then-
a pastor thing.
that's a pastor thing.
Absolutely.
Stage.
So then on our 13th birthday,
That's where we had a group of men.
Couple different things.
Yeah. So we had an affirmation thing where we'd get a group of men that were in the church that you knew. You picked them, like youth pastor, kids pastor, different staff, different leaders. And we had a birthday party for you. And then they spoke in your life, and they gave you one warning from their life. and then one word of advice, and a value and a quality that they saw in you. Do you guys? What was your impression of that moment?
I remember we were in the 4 and 5-year-old preschool room,
Yep.
and
With pizza.
and I just remember. I don't know that I really remember the content of what was said at the time. Like, it wasn't like this one thing, but I just remember knowing that, wow, these men believe in me and want me to do well. And it wasn't really about what they said, but it was about them being there. And I think you could recognize that they meant what they said and they really were heartfelt. And again, as a 13-year-old, I don't know that I fully grasped everything, but grasping that people cared about me. I don't know about you if you remember better than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just remember too, shout out to Pastor Allen, who was our youth
I
pastor.
remember that,
Like he
yeah.
was just very passionate about some of the mistakes that he had made early on and just really believing in me specifically of like, hey, I think the great quality of having men speak into young men is like you don't have to learn through mistakes. You can actually learn through other people's experience.
Mhm.
And so that was really, really great. And a couple other guys that really got to share some impactful things of like, hey, you can continue serving God. You don't have to go down the path that we did. And we actually want to help you set you up for success. And them even wishing like, man, I wish I would have had something like this when I was
Exactly.
growing up that I could have learned
Mhm.
from. And so just remembering those
And
moments.
I've heard people that have improved on this, and they have people write it out. Like, what's the admirable quality? What's the warning? And anything, and then they hand it to you so that you actually have a collection.
Mhm.
Or if it's not too personal or people are willing to do it, you could just video it and then you have it. But I kind of like the printed thing to go back to because, digging up a video. But I mean,
Yeah, I just saw Mark Batterson post, like, I don't know, maybe a month ago, that one of his kids, they went out and did that with a bunch of people from their church, and it just brought back those memories. I was like, I remember that.
Mhm.
and then we did the missions trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing, once they turned 13, we asked them to pray about a country in the world that they wanted to visit, and then we'd go on a mission trip there. Or you
And this
guys
is
went.
back, like now we do 62 missions trips, I think, are happening this year. But this is when the church did like 2 or 3 a year max. And I gave you guys the globe and I said, pray over it, pick a continent. And you picked Africa, you picked South America. And then I said, all right, these are our missionaries. And you said, I think it's the Swaziland one, which is now Eswatini, and did that. And then you said it's Argentina, which is amazing to this day. We have a campus there, a location in Eswatini, and we take care of the orphans there. And then we've done ministry in Argentina, and we're getting ready to build a new chapel on that same spot where we were. They're actually literally tearing down a former Nazi camp building, tearing it down and turning it into a chapel, and Kingdom Builders is building that. So we're going to have an opportunity to go there and see that. So
It was a father-son, so it was just us.
Yep.
And I remember in Argentina, the purpose of the trip was to help the Bible school build some new buildings and some dormitories. And
you said
things.
father-son. It was father-son, but we opened it up to the whole church to go
Yeah,
along
for
with
us.
us.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
So
like
you stayed home with Connor, and then you stayed home with Logan.
Yeah. So there was other people from the team there, but for us, it was just us two. But we were building dormitories and using concrete and everything. And they didn't know you. The Bible school didn't really know you at all. They just knew this church was coming in, and they said, "Hey, we saw you wrote a book, and you kind of are a good pastor. Would you want to teach in the Bible school while you're here rather than do the concrete?" And you said, "Well, like I'm here with my son, and that's kind of a father-son bonding thing." And I just remember I was 13, and I leaned over. I said, "Dad, you're no good helping with this anyways. You're better off teaching at the Bible school."
It's true. It's true.
You're not very handy.
So it was me and the rest of the team that were building, and you teaching. But again, I think that's the way we've
We still
always
had dinner together on the free day, and
and steak. It was the
slept in the dorms.
only place steak was cheaper than chicken. Argentina is a great place. But I think those moments were moments where, we were able to see the ministry. And one of the things that I say to people all the time is a lot of my friends in school, they didn't really know what their parents did for work. And I'm not talking about ministry, but just anything. I remember talking, it's like, those memories that are so random that just stick in your brain and you don't know why. I just remember talking to this girl, and I think her dad worked it was Echo Lab here in St. Paul. And I said, "What does he do?" She said, "I don't know." I said, what do you mean? Like, you don't even know what his job is? She said, no, I have no idea what he does for work. And I think I was in 9th or 10th grade. But that just stuck with me thinking, I know exactly what my parents do. I've been with them on it. I see them every weekend. I see them doing it. And I think that was a huge part in just knowing that it wasn't about us. Talk about sports, activities, things that maybe there's a pressure of a lot of people to say, hey, I want my kid to be great at this. For us, we didn't really, I mean, maybe it's our athletic prowess just
Not
wasn't very,
five-star athlete.
we're
right
not
here.
the best. But
Hate to
I
admit
do
it, but-
remember even as a kid, like, we wanted to do traveling baseball or traveling basketball. And you were like, sorry, you can do in-house.
Yeah.
You said no hockey. Like, it wasn't even
Yeah.
an option.
was-
it was like no hockey. Why?
It was
'Cause
funny.
on
We went to
Sunday.
the
they
Like,
practice
Wild
on
game
Sunday
the other
morning.
day,
Pro.
and we couldn't even, we're watching the Wild game, and I was thinking we didn't do hockey because it just took too much time. We literally said, if we're going to start a church and do this and be in ministry, we don't know where we're going to find the time for hockey. And we're like, you can do pretty much any other sport except for that one. You might have been amazing at hockey,
Yeah.
but
Probably not.
probably not.
But,
But
that's okay.
But you coached, I mean, when you started, when you were little.
At the Christian
We
school.
played soccer and
no,
you
but I
played
coached like the
baseball.
club stuff in Lakeville and in different. Matter of fact, Tim, who's one of our lead ushers,
Yeah.
we coached you in soccer together.
Yeah.
You know,
He still reminds me about that.
Oh, yeah. He reminds me about it. I coach Connor in soccer.
but we
Loved him.
we did sports, and we said you can do in house. We're not going to travel the world. If you'd had incredible talent on that, we might have changed our mind of like, all right, they're the best of the best in Lakeville. We've got to elevate this. But it was like, all right, they're in there, they're having fun, they're learning sports, they're learning teamwork, camaraderie. And we said, we're going to be at about 70%. Like, what would you say on that?
Yeah, so we kind of laid down the expectations for you guys because we knew that he wouldn't be able to be at everything. Like a lot of parents are at every game, they go to every practice, and we just said, you know what, Dad's not going to be able to be at everything. I will hopefully be at 100%.
What percentage were you? Were you 100%?
I was pretty much 100%.
Pretty close.
but-
95?
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't go to
I
the
was 70.
practices, but to the games, I was there. And then we said, you know, Dad's going to make as many as he can, but hopefully about 70%. So then you would know up front, like, that he wasn't going to be
But
at
do
everything.
you remember we also said, hey, the world doesn't revolve around you.
Yeah.
Like, you're playing sports and it doesn't revolve around you. We're on mission for God, and sports are fun, but it's not everything. And we're not going to sacrifice what we believe in for you to do sports. Sorry.
Mhm.
Or choir or whatever, you know, and you were in like a select choir that had like 9 million concerts.
Yeah, in December alone, we'd have 30 performances.
Yeah.
And so it was just crazy. But yeah, you were like, I'm not going to come to most of them, but I'll come to the important ones.
And I remember I recorded something on your like senior concert, and I recorded a video for the church, and I said, hey, today I'm going to do the one role that only I can do, Dad, and I'm going to go cheer on Connor. Somebody else is going to preach the message, and you should be happy that I'm being Dad. Now, I don't even think I'd need to do that today, but back when the church was smaller, it felt like I had to be super pastor, and if I was gone, they were like, where's Pastor Rob? Why is he not preaching? Where is he at? You know, but I gave a lesson, like, we're going to be there for him, and I'm going to be Dad today.
Yeah. Don't you think some of that, though, is you have to, train's the wrong word, but set the expectations also for your congregation. Like, you have to set your expectations for your family, but if you are always the super pastor that answers every phone
Yep.
call, that does every single thing, well, that's going to be their expectation.
Mhm.
Was talking with one of our team members, and she's getting married, and I said, you're not allowed to work on your honeymoon. And
Right.
she said, okay, but I was going to join the prayer call. No.
No,
You can't join the prayer call.
do you know what, though? When we got married, the first day, we get married on Saturday, Sunday morning, I go, should we go to church? We should probably go to church. Like, we just got married. We should go to church.
This is the morning after you got married.
Yeah. And she goes, we ain't going to church. She's like, we're going to sleep in
Nope.
and we'll watch something on TV if you want. And this is pre-watch online.
Yeah, it's
She's
still
like,
hard to get her to church.
She's like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a tough one.
She's outnumbered. The 3 boys to the 1 girl has
Seriously. We had a female dog at one point, but she only lasted about 5 years.
She
You
didn't
okay?
die.
You made us. You made us pay.
We gave her up to our
We
uncle.
paid for the dog,
Listen.
and then while you were on
That's
the global
true.
I
team to
was on a
Eswatini,
trip to Africa, and I came back, and we didn't have a dog.
no, here's what she
I
did
was
to me. This was
devastated.
sick. This
This
is
is
twisted.
her. This is therapy.
This is
I know.
twisted.
Just pour it out right
So
now.
She goes.
Wow.
She goes. Hey Logan.
Tell her,
So this
Brad.
is right when the Nintendo Wii came out. She goes, Logan, do you want the Nintendo Wii? I'm like, I don't know. I'm 10 years old. Yeah. She goes, you know what we can do? If we give Lexi, the dog, to Uncle Rick and Aunt Kate, then we can go out
Well,
and
because
get.
they wanted a dog.
Yeah, we can go out and get a Nintendo Wii. And as a 10-year-old, the dog didn't even like me. It hated me.
It hated you.
So I was
Hated
like,
both of you.
That's
It
an
hated
awesome
you. It
trait.
despised
No,
him.
it tolerated
Tolerated.
And who wanted the dog?
me.
It adored her
Yes.
and
We
feared
did.
me.
She was
But
the
you
one who
made
wanted
us
the
save
dog
up
the
and pay
least.
for it. I think
Yes.
he had $400 and I did $200, $600. The Wii only cost $250.
And do you remember what we did
Listen,
after
but
that?
I
but yeah,
paid
we
him
were
back.
compensated. We went and we got guitars.
Do you
Yes.
remember?
'Cause
And I
got the
told her, I
electric
said,
guitar,
that
you got
was-
Yes.
the bass. Yeah,
Yes.
that was it.
You don't remember? I said, I feel
that
bad.
was the
I said,
recompense for
"Hun,
getting rid of the dog.
They paid for the dog. You have to give them. And you wanted a
Guitar.
guitar, and you wanted a bass.
Yeah.
And so we went to
You got that
the
white one.
store.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
the
And I
Washburn.
got you a guitar and an amp and a bass and an amp. And I
Yep.
was like, all right, that was the money.
So don't
we're
even.
good.
We
That's
paid
off.
you back.
and
I
the
know,
Wii.
I know.
So you actually,
wow.
Listen,
I've
that
been
dog,
living. I've
member
been
of our
living with that
family.
resentment my entire life.
I know, I
Wow,
can
we
feel
set
it.
free today.
I'm
I
glad.
said
free.
we were too
Haven't you gone to
busy.
Freedom?
I said
Wow.
we were too busy. And if the dog even liked you, we'd have kept the dog. But the dog
No, it
hated you.
hated.
Yeah.
I
It was a
actually
Yorkie,
liked
too.
the
It was
dog,
just-
but
yeah.
it would
You
have
did not.
I loved her, but she'd have a nervous breakdown every time we left, and we were gone like 20 hours a
I know.
day.
But then
Yeah.
remember, she'd be laying on the bed and he'd walk in and she'd just be
oh,
like,
she'd be like Cujo dog.
and she wanted to kill you.
Yeah,
We'd have to tell the dog not to kill our
and
kids.
you wouldn't ever take
But
her
she-
out for a
I-
walk.
I was-
But
she
you
wouldn't
led her
even
to the
walk for
Lord. Do
you.
you remember that? You led her to the Lord.
I did.
I do remember that.
And we baptized her at Lake Marion.
I got to get us back on track, or else people are going to click off
It was
this
just real
podcast.
quick though. They were like playing church, and they were like, "Lexi, everyone in this family is a Christian. If you're going to be our dog, you need to be saved." And you literally did the sinner prayer just like I do. And I was
But
like,
we were so
He
proud
sent a
of you.
video like 2 years ago of he was watching Luca, our oldest dog, and he's like, Luca,
I led their
do you
dog
wanna
to
ex-
faith. And he did. He bowed his head.
"Bruno's not saved. Luca is."
No.
All right,
Hey,
No.
all
back
dogs
to
go
where
to
I
So
heaven.
okay, talk about college. So college, did you want us to go into ministry? Were you like?
we did not push you.
Yeah,
we-
talk about that.
We said, whatever God's call is for your life, you can follow it. We will celebrate anything and everything. We were serious. Like, we didn't know what you were.
Well, because you guys
wanting
wanted to
to
be
do.
many different things. I mean,
I
you
wanted
wanted to be an
Yeah,
architect.
that was the first thing I wanted to do.
Yep. And
And
musician.
a missionary,
A business owner, a
Yeah. A
multimillionaire.
player.
baseball player.
Yep.
Yep.
So we encourage
What
you
did
to
you
do.
want to be?
How funny is it? The first
think
thing
I
that was
always wanted to
architect.
be a
I think you
pastor.
kind of always wanted to be a pastor.
I was
Yeah.
a good kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you wanted to work for the church right away. And what did I make you do?
You made me work out in the world. So I worked at Little Caesars making pizzas.
Yeah, because
Yep.
I said, before you can work at the church, you got to work somewhere else so that church is not your only boss reference. And you said, well, I'm going to go to work for Little Caesars. I think a family in our church
Mhm.
Yeah, they
owned
own-
the Little
yeah.
Caesars,
And then I worked at B-Dubs at the Mall of America.
Buffalo Wild
Mhm.
Wings.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I went the
I was
retail.
so
route.
Did you work
ready.
at Bubba Gump?
No.
He loved Bubba.
I
Gump.
You
applied
loved-
there.
you
and
wanted
they, and they
to.
rejected me. So,
you went to
I went to
Buffalo Wild
Buffalo
Wings.
across the street to spite them.
Yes,
B-dubs.
right across the
You
mall.
went
Right
to
across the- right
Nordstrom
across the
and
mall.
Buckle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started at Buckle because someone in the church. I mean, we had people in the church that were bosses, but I learned my sales skills from there, and wasn't really like my style per se, but I learned so much, and I made pretty good money as a 17-year-old, and then from there graduated to Nordstrom, and
Then you
I-
came to work at the church, and I gave you a pay cut.
seriously, that was
Oh,
tough.
yeah. I was like, wait, that's my full-time salary?
Do you
Yeah.
remember when you got hired as an intern? You're like, Dad, excuse me, as an intern, the friend of mine that is doing custodial work is making 3 times as much as I do, and I'm an intern, and he's doing custodial. I'm like, that's the way it is, intern. Get to work. You know?
And we were both stacking chairs. I was like, what is this?
And what did I tell you about working at the church, though? Once you finally came to work at the church, what did I say? I said, you're going to have to work twice as hard. I don't want to hear any complaining. You
To
got to
get half
prove
the credit.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
you
because
did.
there's a lot of expectation on you guys, obviously, being our kids.
Well, I remember early on there was a lot of people that would say it would get through the grapevine. They wouldn't really say it to us, but like, oh yeah, you got the jobs because of nepotism, you know. And I think people who knew us really well knew that wasn't true.
It's true.
Um,
Just kidding. It's not.
What?
But I did have to
for Connor, but-
actually, our elder board was pretty strict about it. And I said, listen, they get in right now. They have access just like Peyton and Eli Manning did because of their dad. But if they're not good, they can't stay. They have to stay on their own merit. But we're going to give them a shot. And so
We were worried about Logan for a while.
But
He was
I
really
think
struggling.
I think there is truth to, you can acknowledge that. Like for pastors, I mean, there's probably a lot of people listening that are people who are wanting to work with kids, or maybe they work with their kids right now, or just raising godly PKs. But I think that's okay to say, yeah, I got them this role.
Absolutely.
Again, with vetting, maybe they're
Yeah.
not on drugs, or they're not like totally doing all the.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
saved. They
I'm
should be
saying,
saved.
yeah.
Are you saved?
Well,
That stories
I
aren't for the
think
podcast
he's-
today, but
I
I'm
think
just
he's
saying.
aware of something.
I'm aware of things, but
Do this. Go through the jobs. Where did you start? And at River Valley, what was your first? Go fast. What was your
Yeah.
first?
I was connections pastor at Shakopee campus.
Weren't you an intern before that?
Well, I was an
Well, you
intern
weren't.
forever,
For
like
5 years.
unpaid intern.
Intern for many years
Yeah, like 5 years.
Yeah.
through college.
And then Shakopee campus connections pastor,
Yep.
Apple Valley connections pastor, associate to the discipleship pastor, and now I'm the discipleship pastor.
All right. What have you done? I forget.
I did young adults for 4 years, and then
Did you go straight from intern to young adults, or did you go
I
from
never
Nordstrom
interned.
to
He
young
didn't
adults?
intern.
I didn't.
Oh
Well,
my
See,
gosh!
it's like the two
you got
sons.
off
I'm like, bro, I've been
easy.
slaving
started
over you for all
part-time.
this time.
No, but you know what? He didn't want to
This
intern
son
because
of
he was making
yours-
so much money.
I know.
At Nordstrom.
I started part-time at the church after working full-time at Nordstrom because I thought my business was going to take off at the time.
Oh yeah, you
And
started
And so
a
I told
business.
you, I said, I'll work
RIP.
part-time at the church for young adults, help out, but then once my business takes off, I'll go. But I realized
Once.
there's a difference between revenue and profit, and I've talked about that before, but I ended up joining full-time at the church. Then I did,
Young
during
adults.
COVID, I did digital for 6 months because young adult ministry got shut down.
Yeah.
And then after that, I took over Influence, and it was really just the network at the time. And then
Oh yeah, and that was like wasn't even on your trajectory. It was just that the guy that was running Influence moved to California,
Yep.
and we're like, I think Logan should do it.
yeah, it's a hard role because it works so close with you, and I mean, I don't mean that
Oh, that's
in
nice.
like that way.
'Cause
It's
I'm
hard
an
to work with
ogre?
you.
No, you're not an ogre,
Okay.
but it's a lot of travel.
I
It's
mean-
knowing expectations. It's representing you and representing the brand of the
Right.
church, working with your books, publishing. I mean, so it's a lot of involvement. So I think that's why it made a lot of sense for me to transition. And also, young adult ministry at the time was just kind of totally shut down on the college campuses. And so it was kind of making use of my time as well. But then Influence has since grown to the podcast and online and other things as well. So, yeah.
You still have something you want to vent at all? You're okay with your brother and his trajectory and your trajectory, and
I mean, I'm here. What do you want me? You want me to just throw it on the
Is there a
table right now?
counselor? Is there a
it-
counselor
we got
listening?
in the chat?
Call
Like-
1-800
Yeah, like
Connor
we gotta-
Ketterling.
No, I
So-
mean we talked about it. Like we talked about it where there were times where I was working in a role and it seemed like Logan leapfrogged a little
Yes,
bit.
it's true.
And we had to talk about it where it was like, hey, you're doing the right thing. The ministry that you're in is just different, and Logan has an opportunity. And we really had to talk about it because it was not trying to be that way, but that little bit of like, man, I've been working here longer. I interned so much more, and now Logan gets to be on lead team, and I'm just hanging out. Like, what are we even doing? So, you do have to have those healthy conversations.
We were always honest. Do you remember, like, you were a great singer. You still are. And Logan was a good singer. And one day Logan goes, "Am I as good of a singer as Connor?" And I'm like, "Nope." And you're like, "Really? That's not." I was like, "Well, no. It's you draw better. You do this better, but you don't sing better." And we were being honest. So we've always tried to be honest with you guys about what your skill sets are, gifts. But I want to do something. I want to commandeer this for a minute. You weren't thinking of doing this, but I want to talk about when City Campus came open.
Mhm.
Okay, I want to give people a glimpse into this. Like, so Pastor Kirk was the City Campus pastor, and we were moving him to Apple Valley. And I took you guys out for breakfast. And I said, all right, city campus is open. You're our kids. Do either of you feel like you want to, apply for this? I said, I can push you to the front of the stack. Like, you'll still have to interview, but do you want to do it? And do you remember what you guys said that day at breakfast, like about yourselves?
Well, I was just like, nope. I was like, nope.
You're like, I don't fit city. That's not my DNA.
I'm just not a city person. I love the burbs, give me the Target just down the street and all that stuff. But I just knew that wasn't my personality. So it wasn't I just knew.
Yeah. So you were out, and then what'd you say?
Yeah, I mean, I was at city campus at the time.
Yeah.
And so that was I was living downtown,
Right.
Totally was in that world. And I felt like I saw the person who was the associate. I felt like the transition would be cleaner. I feel like you mentioned the leapfrog thing. I just felt like it would be a little bit soon and would put that person in a position to not probably want to support and be on the team. And I felt like it was just not the right time. And so I initially, when I knew that was happening, I thought, hey, that could be a really cool opportunity. But as I processed and said, I'm really young. I think Mac and I had only been married for like 1 year at the time.
Yeah, and you said it's not the right time.
I just said I don't think the time is
It's not
right.
the right time.
And we both came to the conclusion for the person who got the role. We were like,
you're like,
just
it's
makes
Ben.
the most sense.
It's Ben.
Like he needs to be the pastor.
Yeah, and I mean, I said the same when Ben left and when Anthony stepped in. It was obvious. It's and he wasn't even at that campus. But I remember that conversation being, no, Anthony's the guy, like for sure. And
so here's another question. How did you guys catch the generosity? Now I'm interviewing you. How did you guys catch the generosity? Because even before you were married, Connor, you were so generous towards Kingdom Builders that I sat you down and I said, do you have like a wedding ring? Like, do you have money saved up for a diamond someday? And you're like, no, I'm giving it all to the Lord. And I was like, wow, like you guys were you still are so generous. Mm-hmm. How did you catch that?
I think a big thing was seeing it firsthand at a young age. Like, I know my first mission trip, I was 10. We went to China. Then after that, going to Africa, and you just see what God is doing, what your money is going towards, and you're just, I don't know, living for something bigger than yourself. And so it didn't even really cross my mind until you brought it up, where it was like, my needs are met. Like, I'm having fun. I'm doing good stuff. And it's actually kind of fun to see how much money I can give. So I don't know. That was kind of for me.
How about you?
I can't remember who said the quote, but I don't know if it was Lewis or somebody, but the generous person always wishes they could give more. And I think we never had a benchmark of true generosity aside from the most generous people we knew. And you all have embodied that generosity. So, I mean, I remember in 7th grade when it was Obama and Biden were running together, and Biden's tax returns were released. And I think he gave 400 and something to charity. And I think you mentioned, I don't know if it was a sermon. I don't think you mentioned a sermon, but it was just in passing. You're like, my 14-year-old personally gave more to charity than the vice president of the United States. And this isn't a knock on him per se.
Because almost all those politicians are
it's
like
everybody.
that.
Yeah, but it was just, it was an example. And when I heard that, it was kind of the first time in my life where I thought, really? Other people don't give in the same way that we do. Mm-hmm. They don't give. I remember specifically God asked me to sell my whole pedal board when I was a bass player, and it was worth probably $1,000. And I think I ended up making $1,200 and gave that to Kingdom Builders that year. And I just thought that was so awesome that I was able to do that. And then to see year after year to where it's thousands and into numbers that I look back in my goals journal and see what I used to give to Kingdom Builders versus what we're giving now. And I don't know, I think that it's so obvious that that's the way we should live. Mm-hmm. And so it's not been hard. It's almost like disappointing some years to where I'm like, I wish I could have given more. I wish we could have done more.
Like cryptocurrency would have hit.
Well, I had one year where I had some good cryptocurrency and I was on top of the world. I'm like, look at how much I've given to Kingdom Builders. I'm like, we're going to have all this money. And then
you
came back down to earth.
Okay, I get
before he was.
Yeah.
I got to talk about a struggle thing. Hun, do you remember the struggle that we had with friends with them because they live so much for God? Yeah. How many conversations we had about will they find a girl that loves God and the ministry and friend groups. You want to talk about that at all? Like that was probably our biggest concern raising you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you weren't rebellious at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Connor used to tell the babysitter, like, it's time for us to go to bed now, like
Logan's like, shut up.
but that was like the gist of the rebellion. So talk about like when they were like their friend groups, and then I want to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah. Friendships were hard. I know, Connor, especially you transitioned from Christian school to public school when you were in 8th grade. And that was a tough year because that was middle school, 6th through 8th. And everybody had been
They'd known each other.
together all through that. And you were coming in at 8th grade and you came in at 6th. So it was a bit easier for you. But it was a lot of prayer during that time because we wanted you to have, solid Christian friends. And you did have friends from youth group, but I know that a lot of times they didn't invite you to stuff because they wanted to maybe goof off or do things they shouldn't, and then they didn't want you there. And so I think for me, that was a lot of time praying, just that you would have good, solid Christian friends, and just so proud of how you guys went through that, because you didn't get caught up in the things of the world. And so we were so grateful for that. But it was tough, I think, for those years going through. And I was really glad that you got into choir because I think that's kind of where you finally found some good friends. But for a while, that was tough.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you guys thought and talked older than your friends. Like you're like, I've been to China, I've been to here, I've been to there. I remember one of you was in class and you were telling the teacher like, yeah, the Eiffel Tower is awesome. And then they're like, showing you like,
what happened was
was it you that
Yeah.
it was my 6th grade class in social studies, and she said take a picture of your textbook in front of different things you find in the textbook, and like there's part Minnesota history and then part world history. And so that was the summer where you were doing the Million Leaders Mandate in Russia, and so we went to the Hermitage in Russia. I got a picture of that. Then we stopped in Paris and London on the way home because I think there was a conference you were at in London.
Yep.
And I had a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower and then a picture in front of Big Ben. And my teacher thought it was Photoshopped. And she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, that was our spring break trip. Like we were doing ministry. And so I think 2 things with that. I think travel was one. You learn so much by traveling. Your cultural awareness, just the growth you experience when you experience another culture is way quicker than it would be locally. And so that I think is one part of it. And I think is the other part is you taught us just to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit, right? You taught us to ask for ourselves, and you weren't kind of controlling and saying you have to do everything that we tell you to do. You'd often ask, well, what do you think God is saying? And so from a young age, we often were asking God. And I know, your parents did the same thing for you. And so I think that was another thing that I try to tell parents who ask. Well, we knew that we had a relationship with God from the time we were kids. It wasn't go through mom and dad to get to God. We knew that right away from the start of, accepting Jesus, which I don't have a time I even remember that I accepted God.
Probably did it like 100 times in kids' church.
But I remember there was a time we went to the movie theater. I don't know if you know the story that I'm thinking of, but that was like a key moment where I think we realized, wait, we're different.
Yeah, like it's the classic. You buy the tickets for this movie, but then you go and sneak into the other movie.
We didn't know it was a classic.
Yeah, we didn't know that. we didn't know it was a classic movie. But we were like super pumped to go see this like PG animated movie, and all of our friends thought we were so dorky, but we were just pumped. We're like, yeah, we're gonna go. And then we get there, and they're like, oh no, we're sneaking into the PG-13, like the movie we're not. And we were like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
I was like, I bought a ticket for this movie. Like you.
They're like, no, they take it at the front, and you can go into
you
whatever
can go to any
movie.
theater, and
You can't do that.
and so we said no,
Yeah.
and like they begrudgingly had to go into the theater to watch the
They
dorky
all-
animated movie.
No. Did they go?
No, yeah, they did.
They did?
Yeah, but because they were mad, and then we never got invited ever.
Yeah,
again.
that was what it was.
Yeah.
They were mad. I remember that.
I felt bad for you guys because I felt like you'd never get invited, but I
but
loved
we
your
stood-
faith in Christ.
like
I
that was kind of the first time that I remember us really having to stand up in front of a group of people and say,
this is like friends.
yeah, these
from
were
church.
friends from
like,
church,
Yeah.
and it was, we just were so surprised. And I remember going home like, wow, why would they do that? You know, and just kind of sheltered, I think, is one way you could say it, but I would say it was more protected. It wasn't sheltered. It was just protected from some of those things. And, you know, we would be around a good group of friends. I had a really good group of friends from church that when I look back, we were kind of like rowdy and mischievous, but we weren't doing anything really bad.
Fine.
We were just teenagers and running around and figuring it out and having fun, longboarding, you know, scraping ourselves up. But we had a good group of friends that I think were close together going throughout high school. And some of them are still a part of the church. Others are, you know, at different churches. And, you know, some have walked away, and I pray for them and believing that they would come back to faith in Christ. But I think that overall, we just had a strong, like 5 or 6 people that we were friends from freshman year really all the way through beginning of college, which was super impactful.
So what about ministry now?
Yeah.
Like,
it's harder. I mean, it's hard to think about the differences, but I think it's more rewarding in that we get to do ministry together. We get to see, like, it's us.
Yeah.
But also there's the tensions of, okay, like, this is a job, and my dad. He was dad and pastor, and now he's dad, pastor, boss all in one. And so that's a challenge. I don't have a pastor. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I've ever felt like I have a pastor. I've had youth pastors throughout my life.
Because like even when you guys got married, I said another pastor will do your pastoral counseling for getting married, not me. If you want me to officiate the wedding, I'll officiate it, but somebody else has to pastor you through this moment.
Yeah.
And you guys both did that. But you're right. And with a multi-site church, you have people you could go to, and there's people, if you needed anything, you could go to them.
I have support, but I think, like, I've never seen, like, oh, like, that's my pastor.
Right.
Even at another church, it's always been you.
Yeah. And it's, what do you think? Like, when we went, here's a thing that stood out. When we were multi-site and you got hired by Shakopee and we weren't there, like, I was mostly at Apple Valley and you were at Shakopee, you know, it was like, we're now a multi-site family. He's at a different location, and we've got to figure out where we're meeting for lunch. And then, you know, when you were at City, and were you at Apple Valley then, or?
Yeah, I think so.
And then I'm rotating around to different ones on Sunday, and we're like, where are we meeting for lunch? You know, it was a whole different dynamic.
Well, even this podcast, I said earlier today, hey, we're all together, all in town right now. We've got to record this today because I don't know the next time the 4 of us are going to be in town together.
Right.
So even today, it's still a challenge. I mean, the other day I texted you two just off like the family thread, and I just said, hey, at dinner tonight, let's really try to not talk about work. You know, and we have to do that all the time. And it usually doesn't work.
Well, usually we're talking about life, and then that'll make us think of something in ministry. And then mom goes off.
What?
No.
Loses it.
No, if
What are you
grandma's
talking
there,
about?
If grandma's
there, she's like, well, I'll tell you who you should fire. You know, we're like,
This song was terrible.
no. And we're like, stop. And we're texting, don't talk about
You
this
did do
anymore.
that the other day. You texted, we need to change something.
Well, when the girls are there, I mean, I could
easier.
talk about church too, but
And they do a good job as well.
yeah, but it's like, let's talk about
I
something
think
else.
the biggest thing is it's just our life.
Right.
And I know some people, I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, how do you stop talking about church when you're with your family? Like, we need to know. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is
We
our
really
life.
don't.
And we love it. And there's good things and bad things, but we genuinely enjoy talking about the ministry and the church and even the problems, even the hard things. Like, you know, we'll talk, oh, hey, here's a thought. Have you tried that? Have you done it? Like, we try to problem solve for each other. And so it usually somehow always gets back to the church and to ministry, but it isn't a burden. It's not something that we don't like talking about or have to avoid. We do enjoy it.
I've liked with your in-laws owning a family business, you know, and all working together, because you're almost like, oh, that's the same as them. They talk about it too. And so that's helped.
Yeah, Mac and I talk about that a lot because I think that drew us together, is that was actually the first Instagram DM I sent her was, hey, you work with your family, I work with my family. We have a lot in common. And
Smooth.
Let's talk about company.
well, I said it was. I said it was a business
Plus,
meeting.
you're gorgeous,
partnership,
and I want to date you.
I
together.
didn't say that in the DM, but
Which was when I look back on it, was you took her to a breakfast meeting,
yeah,
You
it
met
was
the first time.
and then
coffee
you
meeting.
asked her out on a date, and then you brought her over to breakfast, and we met her that morning.
Well, I texted mom and I was like, "Are you still over there?"
Because we were right across the street having breakfast from when
Right.
I
you
know,
guys
but
They were
met.
spying.
Just did like your first
I know.
Well, they
breakfast
do
with her,
right
and then
away.
he brings her over, and I'm like, wow, meet the parents. You know,
I was just.
Hey,
I
it
don't know.
worked.
I guess that means I liked you.
and
Like,
her.
it's
But
true.
you got married, so like there you go.
it worked.
Yeah.
Anything else that you think about dynamic? Like, I don't know if people know, but like everyone that is at this table, our pay is set by an outside board because we're all related. And so I don't set your pay. I don't set your pay, you know.
I set your pay.
You set my pay. She's on the outside board. No, she does not. That is not true. So
She
like,
sets how much you keep.
that is 100% true.
I do handle the money.
we speak into different things in ministry. I get your opinion. The other day we were doing a little bit of a workaway, and Pastor Kirk said to me, he goes, wow, I really enjoyed the dynamic between you and Logan. That was fun to watch. And I didn't ask him more about it, but he's like, and I asked Pastor Chris about it the other day. I said, what was the fun part of the dynamic? He goes, well, all of us tell you what we think in just we kind of go like this to get there sometimes. And he goes, Logan just goes, and he said it was kind of fun, like almost like when you're on the stage doing announcements with me, and then you poke at me, and then people love.
Well, it's
love.
like Generosity Accelerator. I can keep you on time and be like, I just need to cut you off. I think there is a familiarity for those. We talked about some of the pitfalls and some of the negativity, but some of the positive things in ministry, I think, is you have a familiarity that I can walk into your office, I can interrupt a meeting. Like, I don't try to do that, but just there is that familiarity where if I'm involved, sometimes it goes quicker or it might go smoother, or again, I can cut through, I can sense, like I've tried to communicate with my team and even just others in the organization to say, I have privileges in this organization. I understand that. We both do. We have these privileges. Now we can either use those privileges selfishly, or we can use them for the benefit of the rest of the team and for you. And so what I try to do is I try to be a translator between the team and between you to say, if you say something, they hear their boss talking about it. And sometimes I say, okay, he doesn't need it now. Like, you don't need to,
He
like,
just read a book about it. He's
Yeah.
excited. Just give it a
yeah,
week.
but
Just
like,
hold on.
he meant, I
He
want
tends
you.
to exaggerate a little.
Yes. We always said pastor time growing up. Whatever time he said he was at, it was one step before that. So if he says, oh, I'm just walking out of the lobby, that means he's actually in the lobby talking to someone, or I'm just getting in the car, that means he's grabbing his keys. Like, it's one
I
step
was one step
behind. But I think that I try to be helpful to the organization, but then be helpful to you as well, to where sometimes problems come up to you and it's like, okay, is this really dire? No, that's not really dire. Here's what they meant, or here's some timelines. And so I've tried to be that way, the organization, representing, to be helpful, not to be
good.
manipulative for my own benefit. I don't know if there's any other things you can think of.
I try to manipulate for my benefit. Because, I'm like, hey, here's a thought. Like, what do you think about that? And he's like, absolutely. I'm like, great. Can you just
Make
send
sure I
that out
get
to
the
the
No,
credit.
what I think is so fun is when you have a good idea, you're so excited about it. I love that he's so excited to share it. So it's just kind of fun watching how excited you are.
It's just
about
trying
it.
to get a meeting with you is his challenge.
Yeah, like I
Whatever.
got one like 6 months from now. Super pumped about.
Whatever.
I'm just kidding.
Mom, what are things you think of as we kind of come to a close here on this conversation? Maybe we'll do it again if there's people that submit questions, but
That'd be fun.
I think that my goal is just, I wanted to do this. I've been thinking about it for a while since we crossed 100 episodes. It's like, okay, you haven't even been on the podcast.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah. I mean, I have asked you before, but
I don't think so.
I think I have.
Okay, be positive now. Upbuild these children. Come on.
No, I'm just like, and I say this all the time to him, but I'm just so proud, like, so proud of you guys, how you've turned out. And people ask me all the time, what'd you guys do? And I feel like, I don't really feel like it's anything we did except for we tried to be real and we prayed a ton and we just, just loved you and tried to encourage you with what you were interested in. We didn't I think we said yes a lot. We tried to say yes to you and not be like overly strict or it's just been so fun. Like you guys have been so fun. Like Connor, you make me laugh like crazy. One of my favorite times I remember was driving you guys to school in the morning when you were in high school. And I just loved it. And I remember I'd be like, it was early because you had early bird classes, and I'd be like, I'm still sleeping. And we would just tease and joke the whole way to school. And I loved that time. But I just couldn't be more proud of who you guys are
It's true.
and what you're doing. And I just am so grateful that we can be in ministry together. And it's just absolutely the best.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And years ago, Keith Kraft told me like some of his kids were on his staff. And he said, if your boys ever get an opportunity to be on the team, you're going to love it. And I was afraid, like, I don't know how that's going to be with them here. I got to say, I love it. I absolutely love it and think it's amazing. And the other day I was thinking about other families like the Grahams and the Collins and the Freetags. We have a bunch of kids from those three families, and I was like,
on staff.
on staff, yeah. And I was just like, I love having that family dynamic. And I was teasing one of them, I forget, but I said, you should have had more kids. I'd have hired them all. And it's a joy to have you two here and to be proud of you. You are like John the Baptist fulfilling your call, and no beheading, but you guys are like that type of pastor's kid that, well, people say to me, they say like, wow, like seeing them endorses your ministry and endorses everything you're saying. And I know we're kind of landing the plane, but remember when we were getting our loan and the lender said, we're trying to see what kind of person you are. I said, talk to my kids. Talk to them. And if you see a closed spirit, if you don't see a love for God, if you don't see that, don't give me the loan. And they were like, wow, because we believed in you then and we believe in you now. And we're so proud of you. So I'd say, talk to my kids, look at them and see how they walk their faith and see our children. And if you see the real deal there, believe in the church that we're building here and get on board. So
Connor, any last thoughts?
We say this a lot at the church, is that we're healthy, we're not perfect. And I
that's
think, that was our family. Like our family was super healthy, but not perfect. Like, yeah, we had struggles and we had to work things out and we had to figure it out together. And, maybe I wouldn't have handled it that way, or even apologizing. I think you guys were good at that, of like, hey, I was wrong, or I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that, and like apologizing to us. So I think just really modeling that and not putting the bar so high that it's like, oh my gosh, look at the Ketterlings are perfect. No, we're not. We're not perfect, but we're healthy, and that's okay. And everybody can be healthy as a family. Everybody can lead a great church and lead a great family.
Well, we love you guys and we're so proud of you.
Yep.
And man, we could do this over and over again. And
No, it's a privilege that we get to do this. And the last thing I thought when you were talking about that, Connor, is a lot of times I've thought in my life, like we haven't had a ton of super deep moments of pain that have, stuck with us, that like, have we just lived an easy life? And for a while I thought that. I thought we just lived an easy life. But as I look back, what I realize is I think we've just learned how to carry things lightly, and how, like Jesus says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. He doesn't mean you're not going to live a life of suffering. He doesn't mean, you look at the cost of discipleship, right? It's high. And then even when you tell stories at conferences or we talk about the things that have happened, we've had pastors get arrested. We've had family members take their own life. We've had people struggle with addiction. We've had all these different things. We've had cancer that has taken, your dad. And it's like, there's a lot of things in our life that I look back on and they could have derailed us.
The church was broke that one time too.
Yeah.
And the church wasn't going to be open the next weekend.
Totally. And so just things that I think could have easily pitted us against each other. And I know we were kids for some of those, but when I look at it, I realize No, and you shared this at one of our young adult leader meetings, and I just remember how quick you were at answering it. One of our leaders asked a question: What is something that allows you to have longevity in ministry? And I know we've done podcasts recently about that, but the thing you said right away was you have to forgive quickly. You have to forgive quickly. And so I've seen that to be true with all the people who were at odds with our family. Nearly every single one of them has reconciled to get back with us, and we're good friends with them.
Yep.
But then also, just those things that were super heavy weights, the pain, the struggles, all the adversity, I just look at how it was handled, and it kind of bubbled up, and then it just dissipated, and the air came out of it. And so I think rather than a lot of people carry these struggles around and these things around with resentment forever, and they carry it with them, with the exception of the guitars that I was not aware of for the dog, that
Still hurts. Doesn't it?
I'm
the
grateful that
air
we
is
were
coming
Let it go,
out.
honey. Let it go.
But with the exception of that one, overall, I feel like we've given things away, we've given them to God, and we've not let them continue in our family. We don't bring up stuff from the past. I mean, even whenever you bring up stories at conferences, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. Like that person died, or that person stole money from us, or whatever it is. And I just think you have carried it lightly, and you've passed that on to us as families of our own. And so I just want to thank you for that. And I think there's a lot of people that are probably nodding their heads right now, whether they're listening in their car or watching this video, saying if they know you both, that they've seen you carry things lightly, and you've embodied generosity, you've embodied a awe of God that you both live in well. And so thank you for leading the way strong, and excited for the future of all of us in ministry and many more years to come. And hopefully people get a lot out of this episode. And until next time,
You know what I just thought of before you landed?
Oh my
Remember we used to do
gosh.
hugs and kisses?
Oh, we would.
We'd put Connor
we're not
between-
going to reenact.
I know. We'd put Connor here and Logan there so that Becca and I would kiss each of their cheeks and kiss our...
And they
we'd
would
say-
roll their eyes,
we'd
and
say,
we knew they
we
loved
we
it.
love you,
You
hugs
know
and
what's funny
kisses.
is I do that with Beckham.
Hugs
Do
and
you?
kisses.
Yeah, we go,
Aw.
I'll smother you with kisses, and we just
Hugs and kisses.
Smiles.
But
He's-
anyways,
it's cute now though.
I was like
Sweet.
perfectly landing the
You were
plane.
landing
were,
it, and then I
he's
threw
always
in
gotta
hugs
have
and
the
kisses.
last word.
I threw in hugs and kisses. All right, Ant, land it. What do you want to say? There it goes. That's
He
the
had
episode.
the
That's a
perfect.
wrap.
The gear was down, and then you pulled back up.
But it was funny.
Thanks for talking church, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to Talking Church on YouTube. I hope this episode was helpful for you. You can find a bunch of different episodes right here that are linked that maybe you've not caught up yet, or maybe this is new to you, finding Talking Church. Would you consider subscribing to the YouTube channel? It helps us out a lot. Get this message out there to more people, and hopefully helps you out as well. And feel free, write a comment, ask us a question. We want to hear from you. Thanks so much for being a listener to Talking Church. We'll see you back soon.